Kwa mkurugenzi wa Secret Service Kimberly Chito, Jumatatu hii imekuwa ni siku ngumu sana kwake kwa sababu aliitwa na wajumbe wa kamati ya uangalizi ya bunge kumhoji kuhusiana na jaribio la kuuawa kwa Donald Trump ambalo lilifanyika Jumamosi iliyopita. Maswali yalikuwa ni mazito kweli kweli. Nitakuwekea hapo baadhi ya wabunge ambao walitia fora katika kumbananisha Kimberly. Ni kama movie vile ukitazama. Lakini nikueleze tu machache yaliyojiri. Miongoni mwao ni kwamba wabunge kutoka pande zote mbili walimtaka Chito ajiuzulu kwa kushindwa kwa usalama kulikoweza kusababisha jaribio la kumuua Donald Trump. Wanachama kadhaa wa kamati walionyesha kukatisha tamaa na Chito kwa mara kadhaa kukataa kujibu maswali mengi. Aliendelea kusema kwamba hawezi kutoa maoni juu ya uchunguzi unaoendelea. Chito alikubali kwamba mkutano wa Trump huko Butler, Pennsylvania ulikuwa kushindwa kwa kiutendaji kwa kiasi kikubwa kwa Secret Service kwa miongo kadhaa. Licha ya wito wa pande zote mbili kwa Chito kujiuzulu, anasisitiza kwamba atabaki katika nafasi yake na anaamini yeye ni mtu bora kuongoza Secret Service kwa wakati huu. Chito alisema ripoti kamili kuhusu uchunguzi wa ndani unaoendelea itatolewa katika siku 60 zijazo. Democrats walitumia sehemu ya kikao hicho kutoa wito wa mageuzi ya sheria za silaha, wakidai kuwa silaha kama bunduki ya semi automatic iliyotumiwa na mshambuliaji dhidi ya Trump huko Pennsylvania ni rahisi kupatikana. Chito hakufanikiwa kutoa habari mpya kuhusu jinsi mshambuliaji alivyoweza kufika katika paa ambako aliketi alipompigia risasi Trump. Baadhi wana Republican walionekana kuwa na hasira sana. Mmoja alitumia matusi ambayo ilisababisha wito wa heshima. Sikiliza, nimekuchagulia baadhi tu ya wabunge ambao walikuwa na hasira sana na walivyomuuliza maswali magumu. Kimberly kweli ama Chito amejitahidi kujikaza kwa maswali haya magumu sana. Utaenjoy sana kama ukitazama hadi mwisho.
Well, you want to keep your job, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. The best way to keep your job is to answer the questions, not play this shell game, not sing the Slim Shady song, wasn't me. I mean, come on. How long did you prepare for this hearing?
I've been preparing for this hearing over the weekend and into last week.
Okay, 5 days? 6 days?
As soon as I was notified.
And how long was that?
About this hearing.
Okay, 4 days?
I began preparing.
4 days, 3 days?
I'm not sure the date that I got the letter asking me to be here.
What are you sure of? Are you sure the color of your hair? Are you sure the color of your suit? I'm just, like, tell the American people, what are you sure of? You don't even know when you started preparing for the hearing? I mean, the biggest hearing of your life, and you have no clue? You can't remember when you started preparing for this hearing? Can you understand why those words seem hollow to the American people who are supposed to entrust their faith in you?
I assure you, the moment I received notification.
But you can't remember. You got a little Alzheimer's, dementia going? I mean, what, you can't remember.
I have several active investigations going on and an operational agency to run.
Okay. All right. But you want to take accountability, right? The buck stops with you, right?
I am taking accountability.
Super. Then let's start with trying to answer some questions. You keep referring to the FBI. When asked how many shell casings were on the roof, you referred to the FBI. When asked if there were explosives in the car, you referred to the FBI. When asked if Crooks was acting alone, you referred to the FBI. See a common theme here? I can go on and on. My question is, who at the FBI should I speak with? Wait for it. Wait for it.
The FBI is responsible for the criminal
investigation. Is there a name?
I'm not certain.
I'm not certain. All right, here we go. I'm not certain. I don't know. Let me ask a different question. Have you been in communication with the FBI?
Yes, I have.
With whom?
I speak with the director and the deputy director.
Okay. And what have they shared with you about this investigation? So I'll give you an opportunity to answer again. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
They have shared with me the
evidence. Did they share with you how many shell casings were on the roof?
Yes.
Okay, how many were there?
I would refer to the FBI for
how many were there?
And their information that they need to share in their investigation.
So they've shared the information with you. You just don't want to share the information with us, correct?
We have concurrent investigations that are going on.
So they have shared this information with you. You know the answer to the question. You just refuse to answer the question from the member of Congress who has subpoenaed you to be here. Is there a different answer to that question?
I was always willing to come here and testify before this oversight hearing.
Beautiful. Then let's do that. Let's for once have your actions match your words. So you've been in communication with the FBI. You know the answers, and you refuse to tell us the answers. So I will ask you again. You know how many shell casings were on that roof. What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent.
What is the answer to that question?
I think it's pertinent to talk to you about the information that the Secret Service has and that the Secret Service knows related to the
I'm asking you
events on
an
that
answer
day.
to the question. If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up? What are you hiding, my friend?
I'm not covering anything up.
Then why can't you answer a simple question?
I would leave it to the criminal investigation to answer questions related to that.
When you talk to the FBI and you ask them how many explosives, well, let me ask you, did you ask them how many explosives were on the roof? Did they answer that question? Or in the car, excuse me. Did they answer that question for you?
Yes.
Yes. So you know the answer to that question that my colleagues have asked you. But again, you refuse to give us the answers. You're playing this wasn't me. Well, I submit to you, if you can't, and it's not a can't, it's a won't. It's not a can't. It's not a I don't know. It's a I choose not to answer the question. Well, let me tell you, Ms. Cheadle, if you're going to lead, you need to lead. If you want to be in charge, then answer the question or step aside and have someone with the courage and the guts to answer to the American people the questions that they deserve answers to. And with that, I yield back.
More guns, especially dangerous ones, have made your job protecting people easier. Is that not right?
I think from everybody...
Director Cheater, this is simple English. More guns, do they make your job more complicated or less complicated in protecting these 36 clients and visiting heads of state and heads of government that come to Washington?
I think the Secret Service needs to take into account...
I didn't ask that.
they're in.
I'm sorry. I asked a simple question, which deserves a simple answer. The ubiquity of guns, dangerous weapons in America, like AR-15s, has that made your job, that is to say the mission of the Secret Service, easier or more difficult?
I think the threat environment for protecting our Secret Service protectees is always difficult, and that's dynamic, and it's always evolving.
We stipulate it's always difficult. Again, this is a simple one. Does the ubiquity of guns make your job easier or more difficult today?
I understand the Second Amendment rights of individuals.
I didn't ask that question. I'm not questioning the Second Amendment. I'm asking a simple analysis, Director Cheadle. And I can tell you, you're not making my job easier in terms of assessing your qualification for continuing on as director. Please answer the question. You're the head of the Secret Service. You're speaking on behalf of 8,000 members who put their lives on the line. We just had a failure by your own admission. Do guns make your job easier or harder?
I think the job of the Secret Service is difficult on every day, and we need to make sure that we are mitigating all threats, whether that be weapons,
isn't my question.
personnel.
That is not my question, and now I think you're evading the answer, which is not a hard one.
I am sorry that you feel that way, sir.
How else could I feel, Director Cheadle, when you're clearly avoiding a direct answer to a very simple declarative question? We almost lost a presidential candidate the other day. A 20-year-old had access to his father's AR-15 and got on top of a roof within 500 yards or feet of the podium. And I'm asking you, did the availability of that AR-15, which is replicated all across America, make your job harder or easier, and you're not willing to answer that question? And you think, and you wonder why we might have a lack of confidence in your continued ability to direct this agency?
I understand your question, and that's the environment.
Well, if you understand my question, why not answer it?
Because it's the environment that the Secret Service works in every day.
That doesn't tell me anything. That's the environment we work in. I had an attack on my office a year ago. I know a little bit about violence too. He came to kill me. When he couldn't, he beat one of my staffers 8 times with a baseball bat on the head. We live with the threat of violence. But a simple answer from the director of the Secret Service would be helpful. And I'm sorry you've chosen to evade it. I yield back.
Sure. Director Cheadle, the American people are watching, and they're wondering if there are any questions you can answer honestly today. So, Director Cheadle, I have a series of questions, very specific questions. I want very specific answers. Most of my questions are going to demand a yes or no answer. Do you understand?
I do.
Okay, my first question. Both sides of the aisle today have asked for your resignation. Would you like to use my 5 minutes to draft your resignation letter, yes or no?
No, thank you.
Was this a colossal failure?
It was a failure.
Yes or no? Was it a colossal failure is the question, yes or no?
I have admitted this is a terrible...
This is a yes or no series of questions. Was this a colossal failure, yes or no?
Yes.
Was this tragedy preventable, yes or no?
Yes.
Has the Secret Service been transparent with this committee?
Yes.
Would you say the fact that we had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today as being transparent, yes or no?
I have always been
yes or no. You didn't want to answer the question.
Committee.
We had to issue a subpoena to get you to show up today. That is not transparent, by the way. You stated earlier, Secret Service is not political. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would you say leaking your opening statement to Punchbowl News, Politico's Playbook, and Washington Post several hours before you sent it to this committee as being political, yes or no?
I have no idea how my statement got out.
Well, that's bullshit. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record articles by Punchbowl News, Political Playbook, Washington Post, all done at 5:24 a.m., 6:12 a.m., 6:34 a.m., a solid 3 to 4 hours before this committee got your statement.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Is the Secret Service fully cooperating with our committee?
Yes.
Okay. You say you're fully cooperating with this committee. On July 15th, this committee sent you a list of demands of information that we wanted. Has the Secret Service provided this committee a complete list of all law enforcement personnel that were there that day? Have you done that? Have you provided a list to the Oversight Committee? Yes or no?
I will have to get back to you on that.
That is a no. Have you provided all audio and video recordings in your possession to this committee, as we asked on July 15th, yes or no?
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of shit today. You're just being completely dishonest.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Chairman, I want to.
Come on.
We have to maintain decorum in this committee, no matter how
upset we get. Have you provided any and all memos to this committee that we've asked you on July 15th? Have you provided all memorandums within the Secret Service?
I would have to get back to you on
that. That is a no. You are being dishonest or lying. You're being dishonest here with this committee. These are important questions that the American people want answers to, and you're just dodging and talking around it in generalities. And we had to subpoena you to be here, and you won't even answer the questions. We have asked you repeatedly to answer our questions. This isn't hard. These are not hard questions. Have you provided us all communications from the Secret Service related to that day and that rally? Have you provided this committee? We've asked for this information on July 15th. Have you provided any of this information that this committee has asked of the Secret Service? Any of it?
I'll have to get back to you.
Have you even read this letter that we sent you? Did you even read this?
Yes.
Okay. And you have said you don't know, you have no idea. Well, the answer is no. We haven't gotten a single document or piece of information or data from you or your agency in related to the rally that we have asked you for. So, attempted assassination of Donald Trump a failure of training or execution or both?
I think that those are answers that we need to
Training,
examine.
execution, or both? Which one?
I think those are answers.
All right. How many Secret Service personnel have lost their jobs due to this colossal failure?
At this time, none.
How many Secret Service personnel have been required to take a refresher course on how not to let people shoot Donald Trump?
Our personnel are currently operational. We are examining the facts of this investigation, and we will make the changes necessary.
What time did law enforcement become aware that there was an individual on the roof with a clear line of sight to President Trump?
I am still verifying timelines.
Of course, 9 days in, you have no answers. How many minutes went by between the time law enforcement saw and took photos of crooks and the shooting? How many minutes?
I am still verifying timelines.
57 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Gentlelady. We have satellite images from the Butler Fairgrounds. Have you visited the site?
No, I have not.
9 days and you have not visited the site. You should have been there that night. Did you talk to, that evening, did you talk to the team, the heroes that surrounded the president? Did you call them that night?
They were still operational work.
So that's an answer is no. Did you call them the next day?
President. Yes, I spoke with
You called them the very next day, not the day of, or was it 72 hours after?
I don't know the timeline, but I spoke with them.
Okay, because you're under oath.
Immediately following.
I think it was 72 hours after. You waited 3 days. What is immediately clear is that there are a number of structures that need to be secured. Of these, Director, other than the first, immediate 4, what's the most dangerous site that should have been secured? Because Security 101, you got to mitigate the high ground.
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the next most dangerous site? What was the closest structure to the president, other than the 4 immediate ones that you had your counter sniper teams on?
There are a number of structures around that event site.
You know who the shooter knew? The shooter has visited the site 2 more times than you have, and he had a drone, and he picked the AGR building. So you said, do you remember in an ABC interview you did that you didn't have people on the roof of the AGR building because you were worried about safety because of the slope?
I recall that statement.
Okay. Does the Secret Service have written policy you can share with us about slope roofs?
No.
Okay. So why'd you act like there was one? Because is it your practice to comment on enormous events of enormous national implications when you're ignorant of the facts? That's rhetorical. So here's this thing with the slopes. You go all up to like 1812. You can go to a 112, which is about as flat as you can get without it being completely flat. And you're saying that there was a danger, safety concern there. But the problem is, Director, you put your counter snipers on a 312 roof, which is steeper than the 112. And by the way, the 112 is ADA compliant. You can build a ramp for a wheelchair on a 112 roof. So these are nothing but pathetic excuses, and they make no sense, and they're a bunch of cow dung. All the law enforcement I've spoken with over the last 9 days are amazed that the AGR rooftop was not secure. And you want to know why? Because it's dangerous. I have never had any long gun training in my life. I own an AR-15, and last time I shot it one time my whole life. It was 6 years ago. That is until Saturday, where we recreated the events in Savoy, Texas. We recreated what happened in Butler. I was lying prone on a sloped roof at 130 yards at 6:30 at night. And I knew that he had a scope. I didn't know what kind, red dot or magnified. So I shot 8 rounds from both. You know what the result was? 15 out of 16 kill shots. And the one I missed would have hit the president's ear. That's a 94% success rate. And that shooter was a better shot than me. It is a miracle President Trump wasn't killed. Corey Compagnore's life is over because that damn shooter made it on the roof. And it wasn't the roof that was dangerous. It was the nut job on top of the roof. You know what else is dangerous? I believe your horrifying ineptitude and your lack of skilled leadership is a disgrace. Your obfuscating today is shameful. And you should be fired immediately and go back to Garden Doritos. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Why was Crooks not shot by the snipers? Why was he allowed to be there?
As soon as the individual was identified as a threat, they were...
No. What do you consider to be a threat? A man with a gun laying in a sniper position, a man that had a backpack, a man that had a bicycle, a man that had a rangefinder. At what point is he determined a threat?
An individual with a backpack is not a threat. An individual with a rangefinder is not a threat.
What about a man laying on a building that has direct line of sight of President Trump with a gun that people are screaming and pointing out? Is that a threat, Ms. Cheadle?
Once that individual was identified, they were neutralized.
No, they were neutralized. Crooks was neutralized after he shot President Trump in the face, Ms. Cheadle. Is he only a threat once he fires the weapon?
As soon as the counter sniper identified that individual, they were able to neutralize them.
How were people in the crowd? Okay, then let's just take it this way. People under your command did not consider him to be a threat, yet people in the crowd knew he had a gun and considered him to be a threat. That means that you are a complete failure as the director of the Secret Service, that people under your command don't perceive a man laying on a roof with direct line to the president with a gun. They don't perceive that to be a threat, yet the people in the crowd do. How is that possible?
That's the last question, but please answer the question, Ms. Director.
I'm not certain at this time how the information from the people in the crowd was relayed to any law enforcement personnel.
No, you knew, that everyone knew. The people there knew that there was a danger. They knew there was a threat to President Trump, and it was allowed to happen. Was there a stand-down order, Ms. Cheadle? No. Was there a conspiracy to kill President Trump?
Absolutely not.
Then how did this happen? And why are you still sitting here not turning in your letter of resignation?
Last question, but please answer, and then I'll recognize Ms. Presley. Please answer the question.
That is what we are investigating to determine.
We're waiting for your letter. We are waiting for your letter of resignation, and you really need to consider doing that before you leave today.
Thank you.
Director, I'm not going to sit here and say you ought to resign, but I am going to say that you have not given us confidence that you have the ability to understand what happened, to take the responsibility in terms of understanding. You've spent a number of years. How many years do you say you've been with the agency?
29.
Well, I spent 16 years with AT&T, moved 7 times with them, and had a really good feel about their operations, how they worked, what was acceptable, who was responsible. And I've heard you say today numbers of times, well, you've got to wait. Well, you've got to wait. Wait for the final report. When is the final going to happen? I mean, how long do we have to wait before you can give us credible answers? You've been there 28 years. You've had a few days to be able to draw your own analysis of this. You should understand the entire process. You talked about being on the team, perhaps in Georgia. You have talked about your experience in this. You've talked about the professional nature of the agency. That I don't doubt. But the director, just like it was when I ran my operations at AT&T, was responsible for making sure they worked. And in business, it either works or it doesn't work. There's no in between. It either works or it does not work. And your job as the, in essence, administrator, the director, is to make sure it looks right and works. And I've not heard you say one thing about my analysis is, I have asked these questions. It's always, I've got to sit back and wait for someone else to decide that. So I'm going to ask you a question that maybe you can answer. Have any employees been disciplined for their role in Butler, PA incident?
No, sir, not at this time. I am asking those questions.
So no employee has been disciplined and no employee has been placed in any position that would place their job in jeopardy nor their standing in the agency.
We are still in the process of
That's
interviewing
not what
people.
I asked. You're the person that runs the place. You're the person that knows right from wrong, good from bad. You've had a number of days, and now you come before this committee knowing you're going to be before us, and you've got to slough it off to someone else. Do you see where there was something that went wrong as a professional at an agency with 28 years, or do you have to count on someone else to give you the final report?
I see that something went wrong, and I've acknowledged that something went wrong.
Then what went wrong? Was the special agent in charge not doing their job? Was the shooter given extra time? Was the sniper doing their job? I mean, these are things that people who've been around for 28 years can analyze quickly. I watched it live on TV, and then within minutes saw a number of facts and factors that would have and should have been known by people who were there. You've got 28 years. You're showing up here telling us and the American public, well, I've got to wait for the final answer. What is your evaluation?
I'm asking those same questions.
Well, no, you're before the committee. Tell us what went wrong. A special agent in charge, the person who was there. Tell us, and don't try and play a shell game with us. Do you have the ability to effectively, as the director of this agency, to understand what went wrong and at least tell us, I do or don't know what I'm doing? And we come away with, and I'm not asking for you to resign. I'm asking for you, if you've got this experience, then you should be able to say to us, we know what we did wrong. It was a failure in our system, and we're immediately making these corrections. That's why you're having a difficult time with this group of members of Congress, because we saw it too. We've seen the things, but you are the 28-year expert. You are the person that, and only you, that can make the changes. And I hear you say, well, I've got to wait for a final report before I, at 28 years experience. That is why we think what you're doing, the answers you're giving us are not correct, and you are not using your professional expertise. Mr. Chairman, I will allow her to respond.
I am asking those same questions, sir, and I assure you, when I have a full and complete report of exactly what happened, there will be accountability, and we will make changes.
Director Cheadle, what grade would you give the Secret Service's performance in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13?
As I've stated, ma'am, this was clearly a failure. I would grade the agents and officers who selflessly threw themselves in front of the president and neutralized the threat an A. I think that we need to examine the events that led up to and prior to that day.
You stated in 2021 that the Secret Service has a zero-fail mission. It's clear that the events of July 13 show a cascade of failures that cost Corey Comparator his life, nearly cost former president his life, and injured David Dutch and James Copenhaver. When an agency fails spectacularly at its mission, those responsible must be held accountable, and the problems must be fixed so they cannot happen again. Why should the American people or the officials you're responsible for protecting have confidence in your ability to lead the Secret Service after such a spectacular failure?
I appreciate the question, and I am committed to finding answers so that we can make the agency stronger after this.
You said on July 15 that the buck stops with me. How are you taking accountability for the Secret Service's failures during the July 13 assassination attempt on President Trump?
I have taken accountability, and I will continue to take accountability. I am responsible for leading the agency, and I am responsible for finding the answers to how this event occurred and making sure that it doesn't happen again.
So I would like to explore how you got the job as director of the United States Secret Service. Is it typical for the director of the Secret Service to be recommended for the role at the behest of a president's family and senior staff, perhaps at the request of Joe Biden or Anthony Bernal?
I got the job as a director of the Secret Service because I spent 27 years in an agency with a mission that I absolutely love. I started my career in Detroit. I worked my way up through investigations and protection.
Was there competition for the position?
You would have to ask those who were involved in the interview process.
But you think you are the best person in the country to head the Secret Service?
I think that I am the best person to lead the Secret Service at this time.
Jiandae kwa jambo la taifa. Tumuunge mkono na tuunge jitihada za Bi Mkubwa Mheshimiwa Rais Dr. Samia Suluhu Hassan kukuza, kuchochea na kuendeleza utalii nchini Tanzania kwa faida ya jamii na taifa kwa ujumla, kwa kushiriki National Safari tarehe 14 Septemba 2024. Taifa zima hifadhini Mikumi, Serengeti na Stone Town Zanzibar. National Safari. Utalii unaanza na mimi na wewe. Twende tukatalii.